Whenever you want.
I'd like to call the December meeting of the Rules and City Government Committee to order. For the record, please note that Alderman Arnett and Alderman Savage are in attendance, and Alderman Payon has joined us this evening. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I would offer to amend the agenda to postpone 01119, 02019, 02819, 03419. So the only items that remain on the agenda are 03519, Waterfront Maritime, and 037, City Council meetings.
Second that motion.
Second, for discussion purposes and for the community who's watching and listening, most of these pieces of legislation have not been, we haven't received the findings of the Planning Commission or another entity that we were hoping to weigh in on them. And so they will, after the Planning Commission's recommendations come back to us, then we will put these items back on the Rules and City Government agenda.
Madam Chair, just put the brakes on for a second. 034 has gone to the Planning Commission because they have their comments.
Yes,
In
but
here. Yeah.
we postponed it last night, and the reason is that I'm meeting with the chair of the Board of Appeals with the Office of Law, and he doesn't want to meet until after they've finished the hearing, the appeals hearing that prompted the legislation.
Gotcha.
So that's why I postponed it till the 9th of March.
Well, I need to, for clarification, 01119 does not have the report back from the Planning Commission. 020 does, but we did postpone that last night, and that will come back in January. 028 does not have the
Didn't even
Planning
go.
Commission report.
So it will.
034 does have the Planning Commission report, and we postponed that last night until the March meeting.
Right.
So Alderman, you're absolutely correct. We have two items on our agenda, 035, which is the Waterfront Maritime Conservation District uses, and 037, City Council meetings, order, and decorum.
Right.
So with that, it was
So,
moved in second.
Mr. Conlon wants a
Well, can
clarification.
we
Yes.
take our vote first, and then we'll call on Mr. Conlon? So all in favor of amending the agenda as just agreed, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Conlon, please come to the mic.
I would just like to clarify that 3419 is not going to be discussed today.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it's been postponed until the council meeting of the 9th of March.
Well, that might change too.
Okay, it might, yeah, right. But the reason it's being postponed is because the chair of the Board of Appeals and I want to discuss some of the issues that you and others have raised and make sure that we're not doing something that's adverse, and he doesn't want to talk about it until they've finished the appeals hearing on the shopping center.
Okay, I just want to
Yep.
clarify so I'm not
Sure.
discussing it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So move.
Second. Sorry.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to the legislation. So that takes us to 03519, Waterfront Maritime Conservation District uses. Alderman Arnett, I think you're one of the sponsors on this. Do you want to speak to this
Yes, I
legislation?
can, and Dr. Nash is here also. So this is a change in the WMC maritime zone to allow, and if you look at the table, to allow, what is it called, seafood industrial?
Seafood, industrial, and food services
Right, so
marks.
it's, so to make that a permitted use in the WMC, and this is to allow the any potential restaurant owner of 110 Compromise, or it could be Fleet Reserve, or it could be the hotel, or it could even be the yacht club, because all of those are in the WMC, to be able to have this kind of use that Dr. Nash will probably do a better job of explaining than I have. But the thing I like about this is that it is an attempt to bring back maritime activities along that maritime zone. I think it was in 1972, commercial those kinds of operations right there in that picture were outlawed in code. And this is an attempt, I think, to bring that back to some extent, and I find it to be kind of romantic. It's part of the quality of the whole city dock area. So, and the Planning Commission found favorably with one part of it, but they were concerned about another, and the words Royal Farms came out of their mouth. They were very concerned. They did not want a Royal Farms type operation to be taking place on the city dock. And I think that the Maritime Advisory Board was concerned about selling alcoholic beverages on the city dock. And Leo and I talked today, Leo Wilson, he said that they've greatly attenuated their plans for the restaurant there. I haven't seen it. I'm going to go to HBC tonight, but I think responding to some extent to the Planning Commission's concerns.
Dr. Nash, could you help us understand exactly what this is to look like if this legislation passes? What comes to my mind is Main Avenue in Washington, D.C. So is that the concept, or what is it?
Right, that's generally along the lines that I think the restaurateur is imagining. But there's two parts of this ordinance. I think, from what I've heard, there's consensus on the first part, which is allowing the seafood industrial use. So that just means you can distribute, process, and sell retail and wholesale fish and shellfish. So kind of restoring a traditional use to city dock, as Alderman Arnett mentioned. And the Planning Commission supported that idea. The second part of the ordinance was to allow as accessory uses a food service mart in the WMC. And food service marts are, I think, well, for the restaurateur, the idea is to have a little separate market area where they would sell things from the restaurant, like spices and things like that, T-shirts. But maybe they would also sell some other items that were related to being at a waterfront location. So if you picture Iron Rooster, they have that separate market to the left of their entrance, and they sell all kinds of things, not necessarily related to Iron Rooster. But I think that's kind of a similar idea for this space. So
is the space within their building at 110, or is this an ancillary structure that's going to
it would be within their building, but a separated use. So it might have a separate operator. It could be completely different than what is in the restaurant, but it would be it would have to be accessory to the overall project.
It has to be accessory to a restaurant.
And would they be selling from the boats?
That part I'm not sure of their exact operation will be. I've heard different stories. One that they want to sell direct from seafood directly from a boat. I think that would be different than what they're planning for this market area.
So help me to understand, because from what I had heard, been told, they wanted boats to be able to pull up with the fresh fish and seafood, and so then they would take it into this mart and sell it from there.
That's what I heard, and not sure it necessarily was fresh either. I think it was deliveries to the seafood restaurant via boat. I would presume fresh, but I don't know that it was stated that it could only be fresh. Could be fresh frozen.
Well, you know, I see these shellfish trucks around town delivering seafood. So right on the waterfront, we're talking about potentially having trucks pull up there and deliver their seafood to this mart. Is that what we're?
No, this was, the picture that was painted for me by Mr. Wilson was the boat would have the seafood on it. Trucks delivered to all the restaurants all over town. Doesn't have anything to do with this. They were never prohibited. They have to be in loading zones and things like that. But just like every other thing, all of the vegetables and so on, the restaurant would get delivered by U.S. Foods or Cisco or somebody.
Dr. Nash, do we have enough information?
Well,
respond
I
to
think
this?
we don't necessarily need a lot of information because we aren't approving their specific business model. We're approving the zoning change. So they could wake up tomorrow and decide they want to do something completely different. So it doesn't really matter what they're telling us they're going to do. We have to imagine the range of possibilities under the zoning designation and make sure that we're comfortable with that idea, no matter where it ends up on that, in that range.
So the bottom line is the change will allow a mart there to sell fresh and not so fresh seafood.
Yes, in a food service mart, the definition is that it's the principal operation of the establishment is the sale of food items for home consumption, either prepared on the premises or prepackaged. No seating is provided, and the gross square footage doesn't exceed 4,000 square feet. So anything that can meet that definition could go into this space as an accessory use.
Okay, much better understanding.
Yeah.
Alderman, does this help them, and Dr. Nash, this help them meet their ratio of maritime to non-maritime at that location?
I think
What
they've
is it?
already met it.
I think they've met it with Whalertown and what they're proposing now.
Okay.
And also the boat shows are there. Their offices are there.
Okay.
So the headquarters for the sailboat shows are there, and the Whalertown is there.
Okay, so they met their maritime quota.
Yeah, because remember, it was lowered to only 40%.
Okay, I understand. How about you?
Getting there.
You have questions?
I would make a motion, we recommend, well, what do we do about the second half of the Planning Commission's? I thought that their concerns were well expressed when they discussed it. So in their recommendation, they recommend favorably for the seafood industrial that be allowed in the WMC, however, not in favor of recommending food service marts in the WMC. And again, that's when Royal Farms came up. And I'm assuming, or I'm looking for your recommendation on that. Are we, would you recommend that we take the recommendation of the Planning Commission?
I think that if that is a concern you share, then there are ways to amend the ordinance to make sure that that doesn't happen. You could reduce the square footage that's allowed for food marts in WMC, for example. I feel like it's probably going to be a small enough space that an operator like Royal Farms wouldn't really be interested in such a space. It has to be accessory. But I understand why the Planning Commission is concerned because before Mission Barbecue, Royal Farms was trying to go into that space as a delicatessen, and they were, spend a lot of time justifying how they were a delicatessen. So that is why Planning Commission tends to be kind of suspicious.
So the question,
How big was that space?
the question asked at the
But
Planning
same
Commission
area, I
was, it was 4,000 square feet. So the commissioners, or one of the commissioners asked Leo, well, how big is 4,000 feet? and they approximated it's as big as this room. So it's not small.
Yeah.
And that's why they said, and I kind of am sympathetic to that. I envision a little shop that will sell seafood, both prepared and fresh, to take home, but it could also sell T-shirts and spices and crab mallets and oyster knives and things like that. So it would be an attraction to visitors who are strolling the boardwalk. Would be in direct competition with some other people in downtown that sell similar kinds of things, but I don't know that should, I mean, I think they have a right to offer those kinds of things.
There is already a restriction in the WME zoning district for this use, so that it is only permitted as an accessory use on lots greater than 10,000 square feet and is limited to 1,000 square feet in gross floor area. So that is an option that in that standard, we say in WME and WMC district, the following applies, if you're interested in that amendment.
So that might be
It sounds
a Rules
like-
Committee amendment is
Yeah.
to adopt the rules from the WME limiting that kind of,
Well, I'm looking at the Planning Commission's findings, and they've described that in letter E under 21.64.310, page 2 of their report.
right.
So
So-
I guess I'm not clear. You had a question?
Well, is there a problem, is there a reason why we would not want to just remove the provision, the allowable use for food service marts?
So you could either recommend that you don't allow food service marts in WMC, which is where Planning Commission was going, or you could restrict that use by making it so that the size of the space was smaller, which was their main concern, but they didn't really want to wordsmith amendments
Okay.
at the meeting.
Well, I'd be good with the 1,000 feet because I think you'd mentioned selling crab mallets and whatever. It could be a valid use of a food service mart, a smaller one, but I think we
Right.
do need to have some restrictions on it.
I guess I'm not clear on the seafood industrial, which is what they're approving or recommending that portion of it.
That allows them to sell seafood, raw seafood.
And
Okay.
it's allowed in the other maritime zones.
So
now
only
we're-
raw seafood is the seafood industrial.
Well, it's,
Because
yeah,
my next question is, so what's the mart do? The seafood mart?
it would sell prepared, but it could also sell non-food items.
Okay. But
But
I'm
limited-
seeing an overlap here. Am I on the wrong track? I don't.
I am not sure if they're planning to sell the seafood at the food service mart, or if they're planning to sell the seafood in some other fashion to customers who walk up maybe to the restaurant and just order, something that's come in and is raw right from the restaurant, something like that. I'm not sure what their plan is, but this would allow them to sell the seafood, whereas now they can't have this kind of operation in WMC at all.
Now, I should note that I got a call from Harvey Launders feeling that this was direct competition with his operation at Buddy's. So, I mean, this would introduce a competition with other vendors that are already established. I think the limits from the WME, I mean, it's hard for 1,000 feet to compete with Harvey's crabs and ribs, but it would also be competing with some of the things that are sold in Harvey's shops along Main Street that sell a whole bunch of sundries to tourists.
Buddy's is a restaurant. They don't sell raw food. I guess they do
For
carry out.
off-premise. Yeah, I think you can.
There's a restaurant going into 110,
Yes.
so by nature, it's going to be competition. I guess I'm just not clear whether, what the difference is.
The difference between the seafood industrial and the food service mart?
Yeah.
Well, the food service mart could theoretically sell any kind of prepackaged goods.
Raw food?
Well, currently, it could sell, well, putting the seafood aside, it could sell T-shirts, it could sell chips, it could sell sandwiches they make. Anything like that they could sell. The seafood to me is kind of a separate issue, and that's just about the ability to sell raw seafood in WMC zoning district. They could sell it in the food service mart, but they won't necessarily sell it in the food service mart. They might set up a different mechanism of selling the seafood.
And that's how the planning commission separated it.
Okay.
So they agreed with the seafood, selling the seafood. They didn't agree with creating a mart.
Okay. The WMC is all of City Dock.
Yes.
All around
Right.
Market Slip.
It's Fleet Reserve, Yacht Basin, and then around to Susan Campbell.
So how, or do the other property owners weigh in on this at all?
We didn't get any comments from the surrounding property owners.
And they didn't come to the planning commission hearing.
Are they notified, when something like this is taking place?
They wouldn't be notified by letter, but no, they wouldn't be notified specifically for an ordinance change.
But clearly,
Okay.
Harvey at least was aware of it. So some of them had. I doubt Fleet Reserve would be interested in this, but it's conceivable. I don't think Pusser's, it's compatible with current operations at Pusser's, and then the only other building there is the yacht club, and I don't know, the yacht
all
club's
on
getting
that east
chintzy
side,
these
west
days. They're charging us, if we pay our dues by credit card, they're charging us 3% service charge all of a sudden. So, who knows? They might want to get into that kind of business.
Well, let me tell you what I'm thinking. I know the Main Street, or what is it, Main Avenue in DC, and that area.
I love it.
And I love going down there, buying raw or cooked food there. I also know the downside of it. It doesn't always smell great, doesn't always look great. So I have to wonder what the surrounding property owners, how they would react, knowing all of a sudden there's a skipjack pulling up, or whatever you call those, oyster boats, delivering fresh seafood to the market or to the restaurant. Or do we fight that battle another day?
I think it's a good point to consider, because my understanding is that that's why this use went away. One reason why it went away is because it was used to be very smelly down at City Dock. But you are the first person who has mentioned that. But I did wonder about what kind of odor controls there would be. It might be such a small operation; it's not going to make a difference. But it's something to think about.
I'm old enough to remember when City Dock was a working City Dock, and I grew up in Eastport. And I remember when the McNaspy's was a working oyster house. So I'm very aware of the less desirable aspects of living on the water, especially back in the day. It just seems like we're going back. I'm not opposed. I think it's a good idea to have this ability. I just want us to be prepared to deal with the unintended consequences.
I doubt that it's going to be quite like Main Avenue. First of all, it's a huge
Well, yeah.
operation. And secondly, I don't think, we can't judge this on any particular vendor because who knows who actually will end up there or be there over time. But it doesn't seem like there's going to be tossing scallops that have gone bad over the side. It wouldn't be in their interest for the amenities of the restaurant itself. You don't want to have a restaurant next to a bunch of stinky water. So I think there's a
That's true.
Outdoor seating.
They do want outdoor
Yeah.
seating.
vested interest. But it seems like we have two choices. We could, we have three. Obviously, we could say no to this. We could say yes to the recommendation from the Planning Commission, or we could go further and, which is my personal preference, but I have no strong feeling on this, do allow the uses subject to the same, of the marts, subject to the same restrictions that are in the WME, another maritime zone.
Alderman?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think the smell, given your perspective, I think that's important to take under consideration.
That's the
But
industrial thing. That's
right,
not the
industrial
main
thing. But I do think, if we need to change this, we can always do that in the future, but this at least allows us to give this another try to see if it becomes a problem or not. It's not the whole area, it's just one of the maritime districts. And in terms of the food mart, I do agree with you, Alderman. I would be comfortable with setting the limit at 1,000 feet unless there's some concern with doing that.
I don't think so.
So you're supportive of the mart or not?
Well, if there's a limit put on it for 1,000 feet, I would be comfortable with it. I mean, I'd be comfortable either way, but I think sounds like there may be reasons to allow the use to a limited degree. Although I guess they could always file for a special exception or some other kind of, or is it just easier to put in this, right in this use?
File a special exception to do what?
To put in a food mart if it's prohibited in the,
Oh, well,
Zoning.
if it's prohibited, they can't apply for a special exception.
okay.
So
I thought that's what.
let's try this. I'll offer.
Isn't that what Royal Farms did on the other Forest Drive?
They
Wasn't it
wanted to go
special
in as a
exception?
delicatessen.
Yeah, the one on Forest Drive.
Oh, Forest
Because that's a
Drive.
prohibited use, but I thought they
You mean the
submitted-
seafood market on Forest Drive?
right across the street from that, Royal Farms is trying to come in at the Goodyear there.
So currently,
Right.
food service
But
marts
gas
are
stations are prohibited.
not permitted at all. This is to recommend that it be an accessory subject to standard. I think on Forest Drive, it's you need a special exception to do the use, but the use is permitted with a special exception application.
The gas station?
Yes.
Well, there's already a gas station. I'm not clear what, they're talking about
The
the
other
Royal
side of the
Farm.
street. This is a different lot with different
Is Royal
restrictions.
Farm going to have a gas station?
That's
That's
what,
what
they're
they were
proposing.
approached us.
22 pumps or something like that?
Yeah. A Royal Farms and a gas station.
And a car wash.
Okay.
Different
I don't.
subject,
Yeah.
I don't think they're proceeding at this time.
Okay. I am good with both pieces of this, to be honest with you. I'm not clear still why the Planning Commission would not support the mart.
I think they were just concerned about the size
Yeah.
that
Well,
would
they-
be allowed.
And
yeah. And their language says let's see, they moved in favor of not recommending food service marts as currently drafted. Well, yeah, I guess that is pretty
but it doesn't say
clear.
why.
Right.
It was the size. I mean, that's when they asked about
Yeah.
the 4,000 square feet.
I thought I saw somewhere in here that it did speak to 1,000 feet. Letter D.
Yeah, that's existing code, right? Dr.
That's
Nash?
right. So in section 2164-310, under food service marts, there is already a restriction in the WME district in letter E. And so what I was proposing was we could insert and WMC into that section of the code, and therefore the size of the food service mart would also be restricted in WMC as well as WME.
So that's what I would propose. Rules Committee Amendment 1 would be to amend section 2164-310E to add the WMC and WME district, and then that would give it those limitations.
Just looking at the
Districts with the S.
Alderwoman Tierney already has an amendment. It looks like that would do that. Her amendment 1 modifies section 2164-310. And if you look under E in her amendment, it says in the WME and WMC districts.
Look, we don't have to do anything. I
Okay,
move that
great.
we accept the Alderwoman Tierney.
Is there another part to her amendment in B?
Yeah, she also says that it prohibits the sale of alcoholic beverages.
Okay.
Sale of alcoholic beverages is not allowed.
That was to address the Maritime Advisory Board's
Right.
concerns.
So
Okay,
I
great.
would-
I didn't realize there was already that amendment.
So I would
Yeah,
move we
that's-
accept the Alderwoman Tierney's amendments.
I'll second that motion.
Okay,
We,
well, good. All in favor, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of
recommend.
considering recommendation 1, the Tierney amendment, please say aye.
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 Then I
Okay.
move to recommend 03519 with the,
As amended.
as amended by the Tierney amendment.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We should have looked at that first and we
I
could have
know.
saved
Yeah,
ourselves some.
sorry.
I read it this morning, but then I forgot about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, that takes us to 037.
Yes, thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Nash.
Dr. Nash. Order and decorum, city council meetings.
Off with their
Alderman
heads.
Payon. You want to limit decorum or order? Or the meeting?
How about if I talk about all of the above briefly?
That sounds good.
Okay.
The reason that I introduced this is that there were some things that have happened during the last year during our meetings that I think we all agreed were pretty much out of order. We have several individuals have come in here and turned their 5 minutes of talking into diatribes about individuals that have very little to do with the subject matter at hand. Frankly, I, for one, am tired of hearing about it. I think it's gotten much better lately, but nevertheless, the mayor is not really in a position to cut somebody off when they go off, because you can come up and say, as we found out, talk about anything you want during the public comment period. I'm all for that. I don't want to limit somebody's freedom of speech, but we can't allow it to get out of hand and still maintain an orderly meeting. And, excuse me, drank my Diet Coke a little too quickly. We also have had a situation where individuals, one in particular, brought in demonstrative signs, and really I didn't so much object to his carrying the sign to the podium and holding it as he spoke, but when he left, he was followed by someone who had a different point of view, and he immediately walked over, put the sign at the foot of the podium there, so it was could not be missed by camera or by people that were here. It was absolutely inappropriate. The message was political. It wasn't really relevant to any matter before the council at that time. And it would allow the mayor to, take a hold of the situation when that happens. Now, as I recall, the mayor, in fact, did take a hold on this one occasion, and he did it very well. But technically, there's really no authority in the code for him to have done that. he absolutely did the right thing, by the way. But and this simply would enable him to do that. The wording here is taken almost verbatim from the county code. This is.
Then I'm opposed.
I'm sorry?
I'm opposed then. We're not the county.
I felt that it was appropriate. It does not allow visual demonstrations. And I would note that it says such as waving of placards. It certainly could be interpreted to prohibit placards. I think it would be discretionary with whoever is presiding over the mayor, which 98% of the time, I mean, the meeting, 98% of the time it's the mayor, but occasionally he either isn't here for a meeting or gets up for a moment or two and takes a break. It could be somebody else, whoever the presiding officer is, would allow them to get control of the situation. That's the bottom line. It does allow him to be blunt about it, to kick people out of the meeting if that's what it takes to maintain order. And it's a little unclear as to whether he or she, who happens to be in the seat you're in right now, Madam Chair, woman, to maintain order. That's all, plain and simple. I don't think it would prohibit, for example, and I thought about this. I know you have, Alderman Martinet. It wouldn't prohibit the
MRE could still
MRE
come
from
in
coming
with
in
their
here
pitchfork.
because, I mean, the visual demonstration is minimal, I think, and it doesn't prohibit waving of placards or even bringing placards in, but it does prohibit your waving the placards or doing some other kind of demonstration that would disrupt the meeting. The MRE, try as they might, really doesn't disrupt our meeting. It's part of our meeting. We understand that. If you were looking for me to change the wording, I suppose I could, but I think the wording is fine for our purposes.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I do support the direction you're going. I think it's good to have a capacity for the chairs to maintain order. I do have a few concerns, which I do have some amendments, and they're not showing up in my Granicus, but they're showing up. I just emailed them to you.
Are they amendments?
We have 3 amendments, and they address, so my 3 concerns had to do with the banners. I thought the language should be altered a little bit to make it clear. I would be proposing after banners, this would be page 2, line 1, after banners, insert.
Well, these are merely examples. You know that. This does not say you can't have this. It says visual demonstrations such as these are prohibited. It's a visual demonstration, and they're just giving examples of what a visual demonstration might be.
Well, so at the end of that list of examples, I'm proposing to insert, it would say, those items that are designed to disrupt proceedings as opposed to show support
Bingo.
or
Designed
opposition to legislation or other initiatives. Because I think it's an important tool of free speech just for somebody to be able to raise up a sign, even if they want to wave it around a little, as long as it doesn't disrupt the meeting. I think oftentimes people will say, everybody who supports or whatever, they'll raise up their sign maybe after somebody speaks, and I think that is reasonable. And this would at least say that they would allow that, but if it is something that's designed to or disrupt the proceedings where they are trying to block some people, where they're just waving them all over the place and being disruptive in that sense, this makes it clear, because I don't want to impinge on
I've seen that
visibility.
happen elsewhere, but I don't think I've ever seen a situation here in Chambers where, I've seen people bring in signs, but I don't ever remember them trying to put it in front of people so they can't see what's going on or anything like that. They've just...
Well, not for any
Look at
period of
me.
time. They probably hold them up and...
Yeah, and the other thing I had was Amendment 2 was on page 2, line 2, is striking, and this is where it talks about, I don't know if I can get my legislation to stay up. let's see, page 2, line 2.
Any person making personal, defamatory, or profane.
And so I was just proposing to strike personal because I think that's pretty general in terms of how you define personal remarks. So I propose to remove that. And
Well,
then,
wait, can we stop
Sure.
with that? Because I think there are people that make it personal. Dennis Conti lies.
Well, there's another individual that's mentioned much more often than he is to be honest, this individual has been much better the last couple of times he's been in because he hasn't made those kinds of references, and his message has been much better. But there's another individual in particular that has been regularly subjected to personal abuse and arguably defamation.
but wouldn't that already be covered? Because you already have loud, threatening, abusive language, which disturbs the order of conduct. I just think personal, you also have profane or defamatory, but personal is just very general.
Yeah, so I really don't agree. I like the 4 principles of a meeting are hard on issues, soft on people, express to explore, listen to learn. I think this hard on issues, soft on people, I don't think there should be anything directed personally at any of us or anyone else. I feel very strongly that the personal is appropriate there.
But to actually prohibit that and allow the chair to remove somebody for that, I think that's a bit too
Well,
far.
but I mean,
'Cause
they
I think
certainly
you can
could
make a personal remark.
They don't have to
that's
go as far as
respectful.
removing, but they could certainly say we're not gonna have any of that. If you want to talk about the issues, fine. We're not going to be going after people.
It just opens up the door because I think anything could be personal. It could be thanking one of us. That is a personal remark. The way this is worded, the other things you mentioned, again, I think cover all of the things we want to avoid, which are the threatening, abusive, loud. But just personal remarks itself is just weak language.
And what was your third one?
The third one on page 2 after line 10 would be to insert, this kind of provides some kind of checks and balances. It would insert such an order may be challenged in accordance with section 2.16.110. Basically, it's Robert's rules where the members of the body can overrule a decision of a chair. So if, for example, the chair or a mayor decide to kick somebody out for political reasons, and the council has an issue with that, we can overrule that to say, no, that person's allowed to stay. They didn't breach the conduct. It just, again, it's kind of a check.
Page 2, line 10 is where you're talking about, just adding that sentence at the end.
It just refers another section of code that allows us to use that Robert's rules.
Yeah, that doesn't need to be there. That isn't part of what I asked to be in. I think it repeats what we already have. I certainly don't mind deleting the order of business may be suspended at any time by a majority vote. That seems a little out of place, to tell you the truth, with decorum and order, because we do that frequently at the beginning of meetings. When we read off the agenda, the mayor will usually say something like, well, I'm going to take this one or that one first so they don't have to sit through, all of this.
Yeah, but Rob's point, I think, is different. Rob's point is that the mayor throws out Diane Butler because he doesn't like things we're saying, and we're saying, well, wait a minute, some of us want to hear that. So I think that it is, I have some sympathy for it. I don't know if I'm ready to put it in there, but I think that it shouldn't be the autocratic rule of the chair to throw people out with no recourse for the rest of us saying, wait a minute, I wanted to hear that, or whatever. I don't think we've had a mayor for a long time. I can think of a mayor who was hard on people, but not in recent times. But
But not too distant past.
Not too distant, no. So I do think this body should reserve some of the right to say, whoa, not so fast. Now, maybe, Fred, what you're saying is, we always do have that right. So if we think so.
I may be looking at a different copy of the proposed ordinance than you are, so maybe I don't know what your line 10 is. I've got place to be cleared, and that's it.
Well, and then he's adding a sentence after that.
A new
Okay.
sentence.
You have the email. You sent it to Fred too, right?
Okay.
I'm sending it right now.
Oh, okay.
But the new sentence is it reads, such an order may be challenged in accordance with section 2.16.110 of the city code.
Which means
I don't
challenged
care
by
about
us.
that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me say that.
I can't imagine that happening because I think for
Yeah.
the mayor, this mayor, frankly, I can't think of any mayor that it wouldn't be so obvious before they did something like
Right.
that. But
I think you're
you're right. There's no, as a lawyer, I especially know you try to take care of things that anything you can think of. So I'm fine with that.
I can understand and I think this is your intent. On a few occasions, and very few, and nothing as severe as I've seen in other places, but people who have brought signs in that have been abusive, insulting, shocking,
Personal.
deplorable, and I think this speaks to that. The people who come and say, I don't like Alderman Arnett, and if he says it once, he's done. But if he stands in the back of the room and continues to yell, then the chair gets to say,
Right.
out of here. I think we need this kind of legislation to keep the decorum that we want to have in the council chambers without limiting one's freedom of speech. So I think this satisfies that in my mind.
Which this now, the third amendment?
Yeah, the third,
Yeah.
well, I can really agree. I agree with your discussion about the word personal, taking that out. Because while we all feel something different when it relates to what's personal, we have that right, and that should be a consideration. So if it's personal and it's offensive to me, then I have that right to look at the mayor and say, you need to take care of this.
Yeah, right. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Well, I can think of
Yeah.
one time when that happened. You may recall a couple of years ago when some guy got up and said, "I see Alderman Payon over there with that smirk on his face," and
Right.
you kept saying, "Fred, Fred, don't do it." And but that clearly was at least a minor, an unnecessary disruption and personal
Absolutely.
attack. And I don't need to tell you about how certain other people have been attacked on a regular basis. It goes way beyond any point that's being made or any relevant point. And that's why I think the term personal ought to be there. I mean, it's not just a matter of, some guy gets up and says, "Hey, Alderman Payon, you're ugly," and then goes into whatever. I'm not talking about that, even if that would be totally inappropriate and, of course, absolutely wrong. But
I'm sure.
But if they go on and on about, my family or
Right.
that type of thing,
Yeah.
that's personal and that doesn't belong here. And that's the reason the word is. I'll be honest. Really, I saw the county code. It was pointed out to me, frankly, by an individual who has been victimized in here numerous times and said, they're tired of it. And here's the county code. This covers it. There may be a few words that are different, but actually it's part of a section of the county code. The other parts didn't appear to be relevant for our purposes.
I have another amendment, but I'll wait until we dispatch with this one.
Okay.
And it's not written, but it's something that just came to me.
I have a couple also.
Okay, so do you want to make the
Well,
motion?
so
Can I say one more
Sure.
thing on that? Just, I think you've convinced me on Amendment 2 so I won't make a motion on that one.
To delete Amendment 2?
Yeah, I'll just delete that.
So I would move in support of amendments 1 and 3. which I guess now 3 becomes 2.
Wait a minute, now what was 2? One was the
One was
addition.
One was just adding language that says banners that are designed to disrupt proceedings. As opposed, and it would basically allow ones that show support or opposition to legislation, as long as they're not disruptive.
Well, see, I had something, and I sent it to Fred, because I looked at the waving, and I felt that you can wave a banner. I mean, one of the reasons for bringing it is to draw attention to it. So I said that the waving can't be excessive or dangerous. So because nobody just sits there static with it. Remember the shots fired every time somebody got up, this before your time on the council, but everybody stood up with their shots fired.
remember
Kardash had that thing on the property taxes. They all had on red shirts, and they all had signs that they, whenever it was the right thing, they would stand up and hold up their signs and so forth. I thought that was appropriate expression of free speech. If they're shoving it in front of other people's faces, or they're waving around like MRE whacked the screen here, that was a problem.
Rowdy
It was an
bunch.
expensive piece of, yeah. I don't think it was done intentionally,
No.
but still, we want to be able to say, look, yeah, be moderate in your behavior. So I like your amendments, taking out the personal one, but I had on the waving, and I know it's only an example, but I think examples get taken literally often, and so we really need to make sure that we're not limiting freedom of speech unduly.
But that also doesn't meet the other part of this, and that is that it's, this is all in fun when the MRE comes in. And that's quite a different
I
situation.
don't know, I think they're out for blood.
Well, you're suggesting the amend it by saying what waiving is spoken on
Waving.
page 2, line 1.
Right, so what I was suggesting is waving in, where's this damn thing keeps going away?
Well, would you
Well,
rather
In
just delete
excessive or
that?
dangerous.
Ban placards and banners?
No, I don't
You
want to
could-
ban them. I think that would, I don't think we can
Do you wanna-
constitutionally.
How about
I just wanna-
excessive waving of placards?
Excessive excessive or dangerous waving.
Or disruptive or something, yeah.
Right,
So-
but also I like what Rob had there too. In an attempt to disrupt.
Well, those are his amendments. We've already voted on those two.
Yeah.
Right, oh, we haven't voted?
No,
It was
Okay.
moved, I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
So all in favor of the, what's your name
Aye.
now? Savage amendment.
Sometimes it's Mark, apparently. Sometimes.
right. Yeah, right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and so the Arnett amendment will say, we're gonna insert page
Excessive or
2,
dangerous
line
waving.
1,
Excessive or dangerous waving.
after as, such as excessive or dangerous, in front of the word waving.
That, I'm not hard on that. It just, I think waving is what you do with a placard. So.
No, I
that-
kind of like that. I mean, I don't think that's inappropriate at all. I think,
We're inserting on page 2, line 2, after the, after
Line-
line
line
1, I'm
one.
sorry, after the word as. Say it again?
Excessive or dangerous waving.
Excessive or dangerous.
Is waving part of it?
No,
Yeah,
waving is
excessive or-
already there.
It's modifying waving, yeah.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, further discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
You had one
Thank you.
and I had one.
My amendment, well, you go ahead, you had another
Well,
one?
the other thing, and it happened last night, and it's happened many times, when Tom Rikas wanted to start going down the line, and it happened to Fred a lot last night too, where they're starting to personally say, Alderman Payone, we want you to do this, or last night, Alderman Arnett, will you waive the client privilege?
He was gonna go down the
He was
list?
gonna go down the line. First of all, that's not what Ashley said. She said it had to be done in writing by us. But secondly, These public hearings are for us to hear them. It's not for them to quiz us. And I even think the only things we should do is if we're really genuinely wanting to ask a point of clarification or elaboration. Someone says something, and did I get you right? Did you mean excessive or regressive? You know, that sort of thing. Or sometimes I think we do ask to help them fill out their form, their point more fully. But I don't think they should be asking us anything. And Gavin stopped it.
He did. He
Right
was
off the
right
bat.
on target.
Yeah, he did a great job actually
Yeah,
doing that.
he did. So what's your amendment?
Well, I'm just saying I don't find that that's in there, but I do think that there needs to be something. Well, maybe it does need to be, but I feel that there needs to be something saying that at public hearing, we're to hear the view of the public. We are not to be inquired or have an inquisition from the public to be made butt of or to be brought out and embarrassed. Like when Will Small got up a couple of meetings ago and said, I continue to try to get Alderman Arnett to tell me about roommates.
And he won't talk to me.
Yeah, right. What does that have to do with the point? You know,
Well, if you
wanna
talk to
about
him
roommates-
once in a while.
I do talk to him.
I know
Told
you
him
did.
But when you tell people an answer they don't want to hear, they tend to say, you didn't tell them, give them the answer.
Right, you don't talk to him.
And so that's a badgering. I think we deserve some respect sitting up here. I think we've earned it. And that kind of derisive or intentionally trying to publicly embarrass somebody, Alderman Arnett doesn't brush his teeth or something like that. Yeah, it's just not acceptable. But more to the point is this thing of, like they tried to put you on the spot last night several times, several different people, and Tom was about to try to put Sheila and you and I.
Yeah, it would have been all three of us first, I'm sure.
Well, you know, that could be rectified without changing or without putting it in the code. Person sitting in this chair should, I think, at the beginning of every meeting, when it's a public hearing, to say, this is a public hearing. The purpose of this is for the council to hear from you. We may have questions, but it is not an opportunity for an exchange with you.
And you can come
And be
to.
done.
Remember, I warned both of you, I thought that there was a possibility that Tom would come to the last Finance Committee meeting and ask those questions at Finance. Now, I think it is appropriate to ask questions at committee meetings, should the chair allow it. The chair doesn't have to allow it, but if the chair does, then that's the time to ask the question, or an email, as he's done. But I think that what my response was going to be until Gavin jumped in so quickly is, point of order, Mr. Mayor, I believe we're here to listen to the people, not to be quizzed by them. So I'm more than happy to listen to Mr. Ricas's point, but I'm not prepared to answer. And of course, we're in a delicate, I did talk with Ashley and Carrie about this, and what they said is if we were to decide to make that available, we had to make it very clear that we were not making it available just to Tom. We were making it publicly available, and in this instance only, waiving our attorney-client privilege on this specific thing as a service to that request, but that we do not waive in general our attorney-client privilege. And so she gave me some words of art to use if we wanted to do it, but then I talked to both of you, and I know Sheila was not inclined. I think that it's not particularly important, and I would have waived it, but I do not like the attitude that was expressed in the way that he was asking it and the way he was going to go down the line and try to put us on the spot. We don't deserve that disrespect.
And to the mayor also, because folks do that to him far more frequently
Yes,
than
they
they do
do.
it to us.
Yeah, yeah.
And that should not be tolerated either. You know?
So I don't know if there's something we can put in there. I think it is something we should discuss. I'm more than willing, if I feel uncomfortable by an interrogative coming my way, to raise a point of order, and I think we should all feel comfortable in doing that, and I would hope the mayor would honor it.
Well,
But,
maybe the law department could give us all some language that's appropriate to use when those things happen. So that we all say something very similar, so no one can be castigated above anybody else.
right,
But I think you're right, I'm not sure it belongs in this piece of legislation.
that's fine. I just,
But I think you're right, we need to be able to address it. What my amendment is to simply say that the rules for decorum, order and decorum will be posted in city council chambers.
yeah,
I want to post
Yeah.
it back there on the wall,
good idea.
because it doesn't help anybody to make these rules and then we don't give them to the community or
Right.
give them an opportunity.
So would that go in section 2?
Back there with the
They could be on the,
sign-ins.
they could, yeah, they should be wherever. I think there should be a permanent, like the evacuation notice on the wall that says what the rules of engagement are here. And then paper copies in that spindle thing so that people can pick them up if they can't read the poster on the wall.
So would that go in section 2, line 18? These rules and, so we establish them and then say these rules will be prominently displayed in the council chambers?
Yeah,
Unless
Yeah, I
we-
like that idea.
Although if we put it into section 2, it gives direction. It wouldn't be in the code specifying they have to be posted in the council chamber.
okay,
But maybe it's sufficient.
so section 2 is not in the code?
No, it
I
doesn't.
guess it's not. So that means that we need a new sentence,
Yeah, probably a
after
new
line,
paragraph maybe.
or a new paragraph after
Yeah,
line
so,
10 on page 2.
right, so a new paragraph saying these rules will be prominently
Rules
displayed in the council chambers.
of order and decorum in the council chambers will be prominently displayed.
I second that.
Did you get that, Takia? Is that
Putting
good?
it back, change it.
And I was deliberately using the title, order and decorum.
And where are you putting it now?
Will be prominently displayed in the city council chambers.
No, I mean, what section?
Oh, page 2, new paragraph, line 11, 12, whatever the next
Yeah,
line
start.
is.
Start on 12, I think.
12, if it skips
And
a
then bump
space.
that others down.
Prior to section 2.16.045. Okay, so we have O 37.
So I recommend favorably, that we recommend favorably to the council with our amendments.
Okay.
Second.
And we have how many amendments now? 3 or 4?
Four.
4? Okay.
2 from me, 1 from Ross, and 1 from you.
Does the first amendment delete the word personal?
No,
No.
that was
That was withdrawn.
We dropped that.
Are you
Alright.
good with it? Everything else?
Yep. Good.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Sponsor.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of O 3719 as amended? Please say aye. Aye. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. All right, the next item on our agenda is adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Can you adjourn a meeting that you're
Yeah.
a committee you're
Yeah.
not on?
He adjourns and when he's not here, he has to call it in. I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Does everyone else have on their iPad the